Hi guys, so continuing on with the tutorials or reviews or tryouts, however it is, of the Wolfgang Puck 2-pound 14 function bread maker. The next thing that I want to try out is the French, because I'm just going in order, even though my kids really want me to try out the yogurt. I'm like, that's the last thing. So okay, and then they've been asking about the French bread for a while. So it is the next one, number 3, French. I am going to use the recipe in here that they have, and any links I have in the description box for the machine will be affiliate links, which means I'll make a small commission if you purchase items with those links. Of course, I got this myself. I'm not affiliated with Wolfgang Puck in any way, but those are the disclaimers. So there it is. But so their French bread recipe is back here, and it's pretty basic. French bread, they say, is really 4 ingredients, but maybe they're not counting the water. I don't know what they're not counting, because it's 5. There's water, there's kosher salt, unbleached bread flour, which is what I prefer to use, sugar, and then the yeast. Now, having said that, this recipe only asks for 3.5 cups of flour, which is fine, so it might make I'll just talk about that in a minute. This is about half the size of the recipe that I would normally use from like King Arthur flour, and they only use like 1 tablespoon of sugar for twice as much flour. This is 3 tablespoons of sugar. Now, of course, you can do whatever you like. I'm gonna follow the recipe because that's what you guys would expect. I don't want to just mess around with this one, but that's a lot of sugar. So any recipes I normally use for my bread making are from kingarthurflour.com or whatever. I'll have the links in the description box. They have the best stuff, and even if you're using their flour, you're not using their flour, just use their recipes because they're the best, really, honestly. So I'm gonna do this again, super easy. Water, I'm gonna use like room temperature, like warm water, should I say, because it's better to start off warm. Now, having said that, I don't mean hot, I mean warm. The salt, they ask for kosher salt, which if you're using table salt, and using 1 teaspoon of just regular table salt, the conversion for kosher salt would be 1.25 teaspoon. So as you can see, they're asking for 2.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. So I'm just going to use 2 teaspoons of regular table salt. Okay, only because my kosher salt, the one I have, is like super like that chunky kind for canning, and I'm like, I'm not going to use it for that. I don't know where my other kosher salt is. I'm sure it's around here somewhere. I can't find it. Obviously we have lots of salts, right? I have Himalayan, all that kind of stuff. Unbleached flour, which mine is always King Arthur because I like their flour, but gold medal, whoever, just get yourself some unbleached bread flour. I would recommend to stick with bread flour when you're making actual breads, not like the quick bread we did last time, or like, banana bread. Obviously that doesn't matter. A little sugar, and then the bread machine yeast or active dry yeast, which you guys have seen before in the previous videos. I just use, I think it's called 5 Star, Red Star. I know those are both companies, but I'll show it to you when we get there. So what I'm gonna do is gather these up, these ingredients. It says, place all ingredients in order, listed. Usually you put the water in those things. And then you put the flour, and then you put so do it however you like. Not do it however you like. If you want to follow this list, go ahead. But I'm going to do the water, then I'm going to do the flour. The salt around the edge to keep it away from the yeast, and then the sugar, just top it on there. And then make a little hole and put our bread machine yeast in there. Or active dry yeast is what I'll be using. They do have some notes in here. It says, after 3 minutes of mixing, open the lid and check if a dough ball has formed. If a dough ball hasn't formed, if you can't see the bottom of the pan, add flour slowly, 1 tablespoon at a time until a dough ball forms. And that's very interesting, and I'm glad that they have that note here, because any other recipe you read for French bread says the exact same thing. So you want to keep an eye out for that. If dough appears too dry and the machine sounds like it's laboring, add water slowly, 1 teaspoon at a time, until a dough ball forms. So we'll see what it looks like in a few minutes after we start. I'm going to let it rise, the first rise in here. And then it'll probably do a punch down, maybe it'll do another mixing, and that's fine. But for the second rise, I'm gonna take it out, I'm gonna form it into an actual like French bread loaf, okay? So that'll be a little bit different. Instead of baking it in here and being the shape of this thing. So I'm pretty much using this for the dough making, even though I'm not using the dough cycle, okay? But let me grab my ingredients and we'll get started. Okay, to start off, I'm not plugging it in or anything like that yet. Oop. I'm just gonna put in my water. As you see, it's not locked in. Actually, let me get the paddle out. So we have that. Just put it down in there and give it a twist to lock it. Put your paddle down. And since I can't see what I'm doing because I'm off to the side, I'm just gonna keep turning it until it sits. It has a flat side, so that obviously has to match up perfectly. There we go. 1.5 cups of water. And again, my water is warm. And then you can put the salt like it says, but I'm gonna go in with the flour. And again, I love my unbleached bread flour, and I just keep it in here. Actually, I keep it in a tub, but that tub is being used for something else right now. So I'm gonna put it in here. And I've given you guys this tip before. I know it's hard to, well, actually I'm out of frame, but let me see if I can, not really. Don't just scoop into your bread flour like this, because then it's gonna get packed in. I don't know if you can see how dense that is. Like, it's super packed. You don't want to do that. Get yourself a spoon or something else and spoon it into this, then level it off. So let me do that real quickly. Sorry, I can't get it in the frame. Actually, maybe I can. So I would hold whatever measuring item you're gonna use, but I would get the flour with a spoon and just gingerly throw it in there, you know, so it's not super packed, sorry. And then usually with a knife I scrape the top off, but I'll just use the other side of my spoon. Now that's a nice half cup that's not packed in there. So this half a cup, I need to put in 3.5 cups. So I will be back once I have placed 3.5 cups of flour right in there. This is my last half a cup, and that makes 3.5 cups. And of course, we could have measured it with a regular cup. I don't know where that is. And of course I have several of them because I love baking, but that's fine. Okay, and it was 3.5 cups. I'm sorry, did I say 2.5? I might have said 2.5 before I went to the thing, but I meant 3.5. So 2.5 teaspoons of kosher salt, or 2 teaspoons basically of table salt. And so I'm going to just take my little measuring piece that came with this thing, and I'm gonna put that on around the edges, okay? Because you want to keep that away from your yeast. And then we want 3 tablespoons of sugar, and what I'm thinking what they're trying to do with the sugar is they're trying to assure that you're gonna have a nice, fluffy, successful loaf, because that's a lot of sugar. Yeast loves sugar, so I'm assuming they want a lot of fluffiness, you know, bubbles, and they really want that yeast to eat up that sugar. And then of course everyone loves sugar, right? It's gonna taste I don't know if it's gonna taste better, but it's not gonna be a bad bread, okay? So 3 tablespoons, okay, of sugar. And I thought maybe it's 3 teaspoons. No, 3 tablespoons. Here we go. But again, this is your bread, you know. Usually baking is a science. You don't want to mess with the things, but for me, I think that's what they're trying to do there. They're trying to get you a good risen loaf there. I'm gonna make a little hole, just a little space, and I'm gonna go grab my yeast, which I forgot to get it. And yeah, this is easy. I mean, easy enough because it only takes those few ingredients. And this is 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. And I think I showed you guys last time. This is, yeah, it's Red Star. This is the one I like. And I buy this big old brick, but they sell it in smaller things. But I like that one. And somebody had asked me, here, hold on, let me show you. There's 1, 2 teaspoons, and my last teaspoon was a little bit shy. Let me, if this was instant, or it's just active dry yeast. There's nothing fancy or just for bread making, none of that. I always just get this yeast, and it's been my go-to for a very long time, many years. Okay, so that's it. Now let me plug this in. Let me see where our, so again, I do like to write down the times, and I wish this machine had, the owner's manual had told us the times on everything. Oh, I'm gonna make sure this is closed. Remember last time when I made the quick bread, I was like, oh, that was kind of open. Maybe that had to do with why it didn't bake as fast or was well. Again, I don't use this machine for the quick bread cycle or cake, because you can do that easy enough yourself, right? Just mix it by hand and then bake it. This for me is for this kind of thing, for real yeast breads. Having said that, that quick cycle to me, after writing down the times and all the resting time and everything, that I think you can just use that for white bread if you want to take half an hour off the basic cycle. Because what happens is in every other machine that does that, that's what they do. They just give you less resting time. So your bread might not be as high, or, you know what I'm saying, because it doesn't get as puffy because it didn't have enough time to poof up much. But it is still a nice loaf of bread, and you got it quicker. So that's something you might want to think about with that quick cycle. Okay, so we're on number 1. We want mode 3. All right, so we're pressing the mode button. I don't have any nuts to drop in. It says select the 2-pound size, so it's already on 2 pounds. But if you wanted to select the size, again, you would just press the loaf down here. So that's 1.5, 2 pounds. It's on 2 pounds. It says it's gonna take 4 hours. So this one's gonna have a lot of rising time, I have a feeling. But like I said, I'm gonna let it do the first rise, and then I'm gonna remove it from the machine for the second rise. I'll probably let it do its kneading if it thinks it does 2 kneading cycles, but I'll take it out before at rise 2. At rise 2, I'm bringing it out, okay? So we're not doing the whole thing, but that's because I want to form it. So that's up to you. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Oh, well, and then the color button for desired crust, it's on medium. I'm going to take it out before that, so it doesn't matter. But if you want to select your crust color, you're going to press color to wherever you want. And we're going to start. Now, I'm going to set my timer because it says at 3 minutes to come look at it and see if it's formed a ball. So I will come back at 3 minutes. Interesting, my timer went off and this thing started going, let's see, at 3:47, it would start off at 3:50, I don't know, there we go. So it did start doing something different. It says to look at it, I can see the bottom, so that looks good. It looks a little sticky, but I don't think it says anything about that. It says, after 3 minutes to open the lid, there we go. If dough ball hasn't formed, if you can't see the bottom of the pan, add flour slowly, 1 tablespoon at a time, until a dough ball forms. If dough appears too dry, to add a little bit of water. So this, it's a dough ball. It's a little bit sticky looking, but I think we're okay. I mean, for me, that's fine. I'm just gonna leave it, let it go. I might come back when it goes to rest just so you have an idea of the time, because again, to me it's very important to know the timing of these machines. So I'll come back after it's done kneading and starts the first rest cycle, and I'll tell you how long that was. Okay guys, it just hit 3:30 as you can see there, and it stopped. So actually what I'm doing is writing it down. So 3:50 is basically the whole time, and then knead 1. I'll say 3:30 is rise 1. And then, so what I'm debating with is if this is gonna knead it again. It seems like it has long knead cycles. This machine was what I've noticed, and which is fine, but normally with a French bread, you do your knead, you let it rise, and French bread has really long rise time, so that's probably why this is a 3 and, you know, almost 4 hour cycle. Usually an hour and a half the first rise, punch it down. It's usually punch it down, not a whole kneading, so we'll see what this does, if it just kind of brings it down or if it's actually gonna knead it for another 10 minutes. Which is fine, I'll just leave that. And then you're gonna let it rise again. If you shape it and let it rise again for an hour, hour and a half, or if you leave it in the machine. So that's already almost 3 hours, right? Of just rising time, 2.5 to 3 hours. So I'll be curious, like again, I'm gonna remove it, so I don't know what this is gonna do after that or how long it's gonna bake for, but you know what? Most people, I think with a French bread, you're gonna shape it. You can shape it into baguettes, you can shape it into a larger loaf. So it's up to you. I'm still not sure if I'm gonna do baguettes or just 1 loaf. It depends on how much dough and what it looks like. But I'm gonna let it rise, and then when I start hearing it, you know, knead again, I'll come back and check in with you guys. But just a quick peek, even though we shouldn't do that. Okay, look, it looks pretty good. All right, I'll leave it alone. Guys, I just came to look at it, and it was really high. And then it started I was gonna show you. I was like, I'll give them a sneak peek, and literally it just started going. I'm like, oh no. So 255, knead 2. Let me think. So that's been half an hour. That's only 35 minutes of rising. That's not that much. Huh, okay. Well, I'm gonna write that down. I was gonna say it should just be a punch down, but it's going for it. I am probably gonna let it do the second rise in here. Only because it usually is like an hour rise. I don't know, you guys. I don't want my bread to not be puffy enough, but they sure are knocking the air out of it right now. Let me show you real quick. Even though it's doing this kneading, I'm gonna let it go into the second rise in here. I know I changed my mind. Well, I didn't know how long I was gonna let it rise. It was just kind of like the opposite, I guess, let's say. But I'm gonna leave it in here for at least half an hour, and after it's done kneading, so I'll come back when it's done kneading. It just stopped, and it's at 240, so I'm gonna write that down, 240. So it kneaded again for 15 minutes, and it's on rise 2. So what's interesting, I was reading this book, because there's tons of French bread recipes, baguette recipes, you know, it's all different. And even though it has a really long rise time, the first rise is like an hour, hour and a half, it does say if your dough is very wet or slack to go ahead and punch it down or to fold it over, like literally take it out, right, in your hands, fold it over and put it back in the bowl just to deflate it some. And I was telling you, it was really high. So I think the recipe they have for this is a very wet recipe. So I've changed my mind. I'm gonna go ahead and again, this is kind of how we work with bread. If you're not sure, especially because this is the first time, I don't know what the timing is on this thing. I'm gonna let it do its second rise in here. If it does another knead, I'm gonna let it do that. And then I'm gonna take the dough and the last rise, I'm gonna shape it, let it rise. Then we're gonna cut some slits in it to look pretty and bake it, okay? So I'm gonna let it stay in here because obviously it needs it, right? So now it's all punched down. I'll show you real quick. I mean, it's like, and it's super slick looking, which is kind of interesting because if you think about it in the recipe, it didn't say if it's wet, add flour. It said if it's not making a ball, right, to add flour, and it did make a ball. And then it says if it's too dry, add some water. So I think they know it's a very wet recipe. But okay, I'm gonna let it rise in here. I'll come back and show you how long that rise takes. And then we'll go from there. Okay, even though it's on rise 2, it's doing something. It's punching it down, which is what I was telling you guys when you do the resting, you usually just punch it down a little bit. So I'm not sure what it's doing. It still says rise 2 and I know it's dark, but I'm making a soup to go with this and like I didn't have time to turn on the light to come over here. So I'm gonna jot that 220, it did a punch down. Now it's on rise 3 and I don't want that to do its thing. So I'm assuming it clicked over probably at 2. I had to go help my daughter. Probably at 205 because it was on rise 2 and it didn't do anything. After the punch down, it stayed on rise 2 and now it just says rise 3 without doing anything. So I'm going to mark that down, probably being, like I said, 205 because I had just looked at it. Rise 3. Okay, what I'm gonna do is clear a space, redo my camera here, and basically I'll just bring this over and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm kind of scared because, let me turn this thing off. I'm just gonna stop it. And what's interesting, when I stopped it is, let me show you, because I remember Wolfgang saying something about this. He's like, let's say the power goes out or some problem, I gotta press stop. If I press start, it'll just start right back up where it was. So that's really great. He said it has like a memory if you don't just, you know, turn it off. Okay, so in every recipe I have seen, no one says to turn it out on a floured surface, but I know this is sticky. So I'm kind of scared. I'm gonna flour this. I know. It just seems like it's gonna stick to everything and it's gonna be really bad. This is kind of how my pan dulce dough is. It's really super sticky, but as you can see, you know, you can work with it. It's just super sticky. And there goes the paddle, so that's good. I'll have to fish that out. Look at that, my hand is completely... And then at this point, we're supposed to kind of, not knead it, but get it into a log and all that. So like I said, I wasn't sure if I'm going to, hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. I know the sunlight is directly above us, but I can't do anything about that. Yep. Oh, I see all those bubbles in there. This is literally how my pan dulce dough is. It's super sticky. Okay. Now... I think I'll just make 1 loaf. I was going to make it into 2 baguettes, but if you do 2 baguettes, you know, you can do that. Otherwise, I'm kind of rolling it a little bit here. You want it to be like 13 inches, 15 inches, however big you want it. It doesn't really matter. And then some people flatten it out. For baguettes, you're going to do 2 pieces and then you're going to roll it onto itself. So it's kind of interesting with the French bread. No one says to roll it, but I feel like maybe I should. So I'm kind of giving it a little bit of a roll here. Okay, I should have this ready. I'm gonna get some parchment and put it on my baking pan. Which I have right here. I'm gonna lift this guy up. Again, he is super sticky. I'm gonna have to probably do this again while it's on here because this is crazy sticky. Look at that. Look at how he ended up. Alright, that's fine. What I'm gonna do is still roll them as best I can. So, you can also have like a baking, what's that brick thing called? I don't have that and I wouldn't have that, so, of stone. But I'm gonna pull this out again. This is a great technique I'm showing you. I'm just kidding, this is the worst. I just don't want it. There we go. Okay, so he's not gorgeous, and that's okay. Not the prettiest thing we've ever seen here. Again, I just made him into a loaf. You do want him to be much longer than this. He's very, very sticky. This recipe is interesting. Again, you could have just left it in the machine, right? If you don't care about the shape, leave it in the machine. But for me, I'm just gonna stretch him out. I wish I could trim him more. That's the only thing that kind of bothers me. It'd be prettier if I can get it rolled a little bit. Like, that's nicer. He's still too small though. That's a really small. It should be a lot longer than that. Okay, well, I'm gonna leave him like this for now at an angle and kind of tapering the ends. It's gonna puff up more, but you want to cover him. So let me get some saran wrap. I'll be right back. He's resting. He's looking a little better. We aren't gonna cut into him until we go to bake it. It's really warm. I'm just trying to make him a little bit longer. Okay. So here's another fun part. We're supposed to cover it, unless you have like the thing that you put French breads in, or lame, not lame, what am I talking about? The baguette kind of thing. You're supposed to put some plastic wrap. Sometimes I just put like a kind of a moist, not super wet, but just kind of humid towel. But it says every recipe I've read wants you to put this, but with some grease on it. It says greased. So I have some Crisco I just dipped my hand in, and I'm just going to rub this on here just a little bit, just so the thing doesn't stick. You saw how sticky it is. It wants to stick to everything. So I'm just going to put that on there where I think it's going to maybe touch the bread. And I'm just going to leave it at that. That is not the easiest thing to do. And I don't do this to scare you guys, because the bread's going to be amazing. That part doesn't matter. But all this other extra stuff, that's kind of what scares people away. But you don't have to do that. If you don't mind, you just want the flavor and the texture of French bread, then don't do this, you know? It's up to you. Okay, I'm gonna put this in my oven. Now my oven is a really nice KitchenAid oven combo double oven, and it has a proofing cycle. But what I'm gonna do is just turn the oven light on. So the oven light keeps it warm, and then we're just gonna leave it for like half an hour, just depends on it puffing up, okay? So I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. I'm just gonna show you on my oven. I do have just the oven light on. I do have a proof cycle, like I said, but I don't need to turn that on. It's warm enough as it is right now. And just with the light on, it will give it enough heat to just kind of puff up. So I'm gonna set it for about half an hour. I'll come check on it and see where we're at. I don't always film stuff like this, but my daughter is doing her schoolwork, so I'm gonna take this out because I need to turn my oven on. And even though I have a double oven, I'm just gonna use the same one. And I don't know if you can see, I'll show you in just a second how big this bread is. I'm gonna leave it sitting in the window. I'm gonna put this pan, just a pan, because we're gonna put ice just so that it makes some steam in here. So I'm gonna put this pan down there. We're gonna bake on the middle shelf. And I'm gonna set this to 425, and when it's ready, we're gonna slice slits into our bread and get it baked. So you see all the bubbles are even forming down there. I'm gonna leave this alone for the time that it heats up, so it's just gonna give it another 10 minutes or so, however long it takes for this oven to heat up. I do have a turbo heat up, but I never use it. So I'm gonna leave it so it keeps rising because this thing's huge, and I'll be back. Okay, guys, I know because of the lighting it looks kind of crazy. This is almost ready. It's at 385. It should only be a couple more minutes, so I'm going to cut this now. I should have had this ready. You really want to cut this with a thing called, I guess, lame or lame. I think it's called lame, L-A-M-E. Because you want it to be quick, surgical, and like not dragging your bread when you go to cut it. But I'm just going to use a boning knife, and hopefully we'll have the same luck. Only because I don't want you guys to feel like you have to have all these special things, okay? And your bread is your bread. You can make these into round bowls if you want. It doesn't matter. Do whatever you like. But this guy is a little chubby. I know it from the store. We're used to it being this long, whatever. But it is getting real puffy. So I'm going to remove this. Well greased, you guys. Otherwise, I don't know if you can see it wants to stick. Okay. And we're not going to touch it. We're not going to mess with him. I'm going to take this knife. Oh, Lord. I don't think it's sharp enough, but see how it pulled my bread? That's okay. Well, it's a little something. And in there. Now, a lame would like slice it like if it was like a surgical scalpel type thing. But it's not, you're just going to eat it. It's not a big deal. So let's just get in here. I just want to make sure that that's actually cut. And you can do an egg wash. You can do nothing. I'm going to do nothing. But that's up to you. Again, everyone has their little something that they like to do. But next you're going to see me, we're going to be at the oven because I'm going to throw in a cup of ice cubes into that pan that's in there. And we're going to put, well, either way, we're going to put it, throw the ice cubes. It doesn't matter, but you want to do it quickly. You want to shut it so that the steam stays in there. And then we're going to bake it for about 20, 25, 30 minutes, just depending. Okay, it's telling me it's at 425. So, we want to do this fast. So I'm going to have a cup of ice in my little thing here. I have this guy here. I'm gonna open this up. And like I said, fast, but I don't know how fast I can do this. So I'm gonna put this here. Oh no. Let me get this guy. Ooh, hot. Put that down, put that in there, and close it up. All right, guys. So I'm gonna let it go for 20 minutes, then we'll check and see where we're at, okay? You know me, I just love checking stuff like this out. It's only been 4 minutes, and you can see the little lines I made. They aren't deep enough, but they'll be fine. I was looking for my lame, and you know, it's funny because it's so sharp and like scary. I always put it somewhere special, and where is that special spot? I don't know anymore. But it basically looks like a razor blade, but it's a little bit curved. And so, you know, if you really get into bread baking, I would say invest in one. If you're not, then don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I can say that the crust is looking kind of interesting because of that water that's basically pretty much not evaporated, but it's evaporating, you know, and giving it a crusty crust, basically. So if you don't care about that, don't do the ice. I just did that because for that reason, to get it nice and crusty. It just adds that bakery feel into your bread. But don't worry about it, okay? If you don't want to do that, don't even worry. Put this oven light on. Now, it's been 20 minutes. That looks really nice, but I was kind of going off of a, 20 minutes, off of a recipe that was for baguettes, and those are thinner. This one has a little bit bigger. I'm gonna give it, just by eye, I'm gonna wait maybe 3 more minutes, because if you're doing a bigger loaf, it's gonna take 25 to 35 minutes, but like, I would hate for this to be not quite ready and I open it and release the steam and all that. So I'm just gonna leave it alone for 3-4 more minutes. Okay guys, I'm gonna open it. I'm trying to see what the best angle is. We'll see what happens, but see all that oh, I don't know if you saw the steam. It came up and it just totally took over this top part of my oven, but let's bring this guy out. Now, this is how normally I can hear that it's like hollow sounding. That's a good thing. If you hit it and it sounds dense or like still doughy, that's not a good thing, but let me, oh, this is completely off. You know what, I'm gonna put this over here on the counter, close this up, and we better be done or else that was just kind of messed up. I'll be right back. I wouldn't take this out to test this, but, and then what you wanna see is at the bottom of it. Ooh, that looks pretty good. I can see down here. Ooh, looks pretty good. But if you want to take the temperature, the temperature should be about 190 in the center. But again, just hearing that sounds pretty good. I normally wouldn't stick this in here. I don't think I've ever done this to bread, but we're gonna do it today just in case. And like I said, it should go to 190 and it went to 185, 190, 195. It's way past. So we know that's cooked up in the center there. You can leave it here. I think it's cooked and it's way past cooked, so I'm gonna take it off of this because I don't want it to make any more like steaminess under there. Remove that. Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna hold the bread. What am I gonna do here? Let me get this. So it's kind of funny if you read about Italian bread, like crusty Italian bread, it's basically the same recipe without sugar. Literally the same stuff. You know, for me, French bread, Italian bread, I'll use them both the same way. But I'm gonna let this chill, or not chill, but cool for just a little bit, guys, because if you cut into this now, all the steam's gonna come out and it's not gonna be the best bread in the next few days or day or two, you know? So I'm gonna let it cool just for a little bit and I'll be back. Waiting for this to cool, let's talk a little bit. Because I haven't done enough of that in the video, right? So, again, if you don't care about the shape, leave it in the machine as soon as you're done throwing in the stuff, you know, and then waiting the 3 minutes to see about if it's making a nice, you know, dough ball, or if you need to add some more flour or a little water. That's it. You don't have to come back until it beeps that it's done, right? So, which is great. Again, I wanted mine to be more of this kind of a shaped loaf, and I wanted to show you guys something different, so that's why I did that. Otherwise, you just leave it in there, cut it up, and it's just as good as, or rip it off, you know, however you want to eat it. So don't be intimidated. I don't want you guys to feel like, oh, you saw that it was all sticky and all that. That's typical a lot of doughs. It surprised me. I've never read that you have to knead that out. I mean, you do knead out some of the, obviously you get the glutens going and all that, but like with pan dulce dough, it's really sticky. It's a sweet dough, and you have to keep working it until you make your nice little balls and they're not like, look like they're tearing and stuff. No one says that to do that with these guys. So that's why I left it alone. Otherwise, I would have rubbed this whole thing in more and more flour until I shaped it into a really nice loaf. I just let it do its thing. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's right. I don't know. But again, it's their recipe, and the way I baked at the end was just following any basic recipe for a large loaf of bread, which is basically high. Not all breads are like that, right? Some go a little bit lower, but this is at 425. Again, I let that pan heat up with it on the bottom rack, and in there, so it got to 425, and then you bake it basically high and kind of quickly, right? I mean, what breads bake in 20 minutes, 25 minutes? This was about 24 minutes. So that's all you're doing. Again, put it in your machine, leave it alone, you're good to go. For me, I had to do a little more because of what we did there, but it's getting a little softer because that steam that's in there and everything is coming up, so it's still crisp, but it's just getting softer now. So I'm really happy with it. And we'll see when we cut into it. That'll be the ultimate test. Again, if you have a lamé, if you decide that you're good at, you're good at making bread, you really enjoy doing this, cut yourself some little slices, get yourself a lamé. Maybe even sprinkle some stuff on this. I don't know. I don't really mess with my breads that are like supposed to be plain. But the next thing we're going to do is the ultra fast cycle. It's number 4, and I'm going to do focaccia because I love focaccia, but I think it's also really fun to put in some herbs in there. So we'll do that. But let's wait for this to cool off just a little longer, and then we're going to cut into it. Okay, sorry about the lighting. It's all different every time. I'm going to cut it because I can't wait. So again, it was nice and crusty, but as you wait, oh, look at that. Ooh, again, sometimes people just tear it, but pretty good. It's all that sugar. I'm telling you. I was just looking at another recipe from King Arthur. 6 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of sugar, you guys. This had 3 tablespoons in about 3.5 cups of flour. Oh my gosh. Nothing better than obviously freshly baked bread, but that's really good. Okay, so I learned some stuff. I probably won't be as afraid to roll it in flour next time to get a better loaf shape. This is just for me and the kids here. Oh my gosh, I'm totally gonna, the other day, hold on. You guys crack me up. Are like, oh, I'd be putting some butter on that. And I was like, oh, I had KFC packets of butter actually sitting and nice and warm because I had just gone to KFC the other day, so I put them in the fridge. So we still have some probably butter. I would say it's probably butter spread because it's high, not even butter, but that's okay. So I'm gonna have some pictures for you guys right now with this bread. Oh, I should have taken a picture of it earlier. Maybe I got a still shot. And some soup that I just made. Yep, really good. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them. If I can answer them, I will. And I will see you guys at the next one. Bye now.